Hey guys, hope you're all doing great. I'm Ethan, and today we're diving into another set of wild Reddit stories. If you enjoy these deep dives, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you won't miss the next one. All right, fellas, let's jump right in. First story coming up. Much love, boys.
I knew the exact second something inside me cracked. It wasn't when Julia called me timid. It wasn't even when her clients laughed. It was when the waiter leaned in and asked, "Everything okay?" And I heard myself say, "Perfect," with my throat on fire. I smiled until my cheeks hurt while the people at our table learned to laugh at me. We were at a place in River North that pretended to be casual by charging $30 for chicken. Julia liked that, the dress-down power. Her clients were a consumer brand in love with their own story, the kind of teen that says authentic 3 times a sentence. They wanted a PR partner to make their rebrand feel like a revelation, not a relabel. This dinner was Julia's audition. I am an architect. I spend most days convincing people that light and space are worth money, that a better angle on a window can change how a person breathes. I don't do auditions, but I went because she asked and because it mattered. It took 15 minutes for the tone to go sideways. Someone asked me what I was working on, and I started to explain a community library renovation on the south side, how we were threading the old brick with a line of glass like a seam of sky. I barely got to the glass before Julia cut in. "Noah is brilliant," she said, putting a warm hand on my shoulder that felt like a spotlight. "But he's also too gentle. He'll tour a site for 3 hours and tell you the history of every beam before he draws a line. If I didn't push him, he'd still be living in a walk-up with no curtains." They roared. They looked at her as if she was adorable for taming this soft thing. The man across from me clinked his glass. "Behind every great man," he said, and I smiled at him like a polite hostage. I remember the knife in my hand because I almost cut the chicken too hard. I remember the waiter hovering and the blue-black of Julia's dress and the way she drew circles on her wine glass with a finger as if attention were a resource to be spent. I remember thinking I had never felt so lonely with other people around. When we got home, midnight had tied the city off tight. Our apartment in West Loop was neat and white and full of the things we picked together over years. Simple pieces, clean lines. I imagined for a second that the couch would be an ally. It wasn't. "You humiliated me," I said. She kicked her heels off at the door with one foot, the lazy push that makes shoes look like they fell asleep. "It's a bit," she said. "They like banter. You were fine." I wasn't fine. She turned to the mirror by the coat rack and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Don't be dramatic." That is the thing you say to a fire when you want to kill it with a towel. I stood very still and let the heat suck air out of my chest. "You didn't just tease me," I said. "You taught them how to see me." "They already saw you," she said, and her voice went softer, which was worse. "You don't speak up, you go quiet." There's a difference between quiet and small. There's a difference between real and fragile, she said, and it hung there, the ugliest souvenir from dinner. I slept on the couch by choice. I needed the line. In the morning, she was already dressed, her laptop open on the island, her smile back on like a uniform. "Big day," she said. "They want to see a deck by tomorrow." "Good," I said. It came out flat. She tilted her head. "Don't be like this. You said you'd support me." "I said I'd stand with you," I said, "not under you." Her phone buzzed. She glanced down. Her eyes warmed. "They sent me photos from last night," she said, and showed me a picture where I looked like a man in the corner of his own life. The first escalation didn't look like betrayal. It looked like work. She started living in the idea of this contract. She called it the account, as if naming it would stitch it to us. She spent 3 nights building a deck 25 slides long. She said the words she says when she climbs. Storytelling, earned media, share of voice like charms. I made dinner and put it on the counter and watched her eat standing up with one hand while her other hand made notes. When she looked up, she was charming again. When she looked down, she was gone. She asked me for a favor on a Sunday. "Can I borrow the render of the library exterior? The blue hour one," she said. "I want to show how good visuals pull people in." "It isn't your case," I said. "It's a visual," she said, impatient. "I need it for one slide. Nobody will care." "Don't use my work to sell you," I said. "It's under NDA." She rolled her eyes. "It's your own project. You won't sue yourself." And later, I saw it on her laptop anyway, dropped into a slide with a caption about meaningful spaces. My name wasn't on it. I told myself it was home, not a courtroom. I told myself that every couple borrows. But the deck didn't stop at visuals. On Tuesday, she asked me about a developer I'd been pitching, a mid-sized firm with a reputation for not paying change orders on time. "What's their pain point?" she asked, casual. They choke on timelines, I said, and pretend it's our fault. What would you do to fix it if you were in charge? Lower your promises, I said. Raise your penalties. She typed while I talked. After dinner, I saw slide 16 labeled Friction to Flow with bullet points that sounded exactly like me. The first line read, "Set constraints and make them public." It was my note from a team meeting I'd said out loud in our kitchen because I loved her and because I thought we were a team too. On Wednesday, she had a late meeting off-site. On Thursday, the same. On Friday, her hair smelled like a hotel's idea of citrus. The next afternoon, she tucked a receipt into the drawer where we keep takeout menus, and I saw the logo of a hotel in the loop that isn't a place you go for coffee. I told myself it was the bar. I told myself a lot of things. The second escalation was a detail. I was loading the dishwasher when her iPad lit with a notification. Calendar, dinner with N+S, Hotel Frederick, dress code, chic. She had called her clients N and S all week, like initials made them warmer. The invite had been forwarded from her Gmail to her work, a clumsy chain. The location was a suite number, not a table. I would like to tell you I didn't look. I looked. When she came home later than late and put her bag down without looking at me, I said, "How was the suite?" She was good. I'll give her that. Her face didn't even flinch. It was a conference room, she said. They booked it for privacy. Of course, I said. You make everything ugly. You make it easy. We had the first real fight of our marriage in voices that would have embarrassed us if our neighbors heard. It wasn't about a hotel. It was about that dinner and everything it allowed. It was about how she looked at me like I was a prop that kept falling over. It was about how the word timid had stuck to me like burrs. She cried at the end, and I didn't, which is how you know I was in danger. She won the account. Of course she did. She walked into our kitchen the next morning with her eyes still puffy and floated the news like a balloon. "We got it," she said. "It's happening. Launch is in 8 weeks. We? I said. She ignored the pronoun and hugged me, and I let her because my body still thought we were us and my head hadn't sent the memo. We celebrated with takeout the way we always had. For 3 days after, she was kind. She made jokes about curtains in a way that almost felt like apology. She asked me about the library and didn't interrupt. She slept like a person without secrets. On day 4, I found an email in our shared printer queue that wasn't for me. It was a forwarded file to her private Gmail with my name in the subject, revised bid, Harper Street. Harper Street was the other project I was chasing. Not mine alone, but mine enough to feel like a stake in the ground, 42 units over street retail, just gritty enough to redeem the money. I had stayed late 2 nights running to work on the bid. The revised number was the one I had told my boss we should use, closer to cost plus, less fat, more honest. I hadn't sent it to anyone outside our office yet. I hadn't even saved it out of the internal drive. The email showed the doc had been sent from my laptop at 11:12 p.m. to Julia's account. I stared at the printer like it had grown a mouth. I checked my sent folder, nothing. I checked my drafts, clean. Then I remembered that Julia and I had set up AirDrop between devices, lazy and convenient and full of holes. I opened the doc. It was all there. The number, the allowances, the contingency. If this got to a competitor, we were handing them our hand. I went cold. Then I went clear. I did what people like me do when we are afraid. I made a test. I altered a single line in an internal copy of the bid, a line so small a person would think it was an accident, a contingency percentage on landscaping, of all things. I changed 8% to 9.25%. Nobody would do that by choice. It is the kind of number that only means something if you can see it in a mirror. At 1 p.m., I saved the altered file out to a junk folder on my desktop, named it with the same naming scheme we use for finals, and left my laptop open on the island while I took out the trash. I stood in the hall longer than any man should stand with a hefty bag and listened. Air moved. A door opened. A door shut. When I came back in, the file was still open. I checked the internal logs we use for sync. The file had been accessed at 1006 p.m. by the user guest and shared to an external device. I closed the lid and felt something inside me fold. 3 days later, in a pre-bid Q&A, the developer read a note from a competing firm about landscaping being treated as a separate contingency at 9.25%. My boss looked at me with a question in his eyes. I couldn't answer in a room full of people. I excused myself, walked into a stairwell, and pressed my hand against rough concrete and breathed until I could see again. That night, I put a printout on our table. It was a timeline. I had learned to turn panic into paper in school when a professor wanted proof born of neat lines. Slide 1, my draft time stamped. Slide 2, airdrop log with 1006 p.m. Slide 3, the bid meeting note at 30:30 p.m. with the 925%. I wasn't going to accuse, I was going to ask. She came in buzzing, the charged hum of a person whose day has been one long yes. She kissed my cheek like the morning after we got engaged and then saw the paper. "What is it with you and exhibits?" she said, half a laugh, half a sigh. "Did you send my bid to anyone?" I asked. She frowned. "Don't be paranoid." "Did you send it to your clients?" "My clients sell soap," she said. "They don't care about your weeds." "Did you send it to anyone?" I asked again. She looked at the ceiling as if the answer was written there. "I showed a slide about project management and used your schedules as an example," she said at last. "So what?" "So everything," I said. "ABN." "Stop making me the villain," she snapped. "I needed material. You were there when I worked. You saw me grinding. Why can't you just be happy I'm winning for once?" "For once?" I asked, and almost smiled because the lie was tired. She started to cry, sudden and hot. "You don't see me," she said. "You only see the things I take from you. You never see what you take from me." "What do I take from you?" "Room," she said. "Air. Attention." She wiped her face with her palm like she was scrubbing it. "You want me to be small so you can feel big." I stared at her. "You called me timid to people you needed to impress," I said. "You put my work in your deck without my name. You tell me I'm fragile when I bleed. I am not your small." She shook her head. "I loved you when you were a man who didn't care about this stuff," she said. "You make me into someone I don't even like thinking about." "You did that," I said quietly. "You in the room where they laugh at me." The second fight ended with a door closing. She went to a friend's in Bucktown. I sat on the floor and looked at the legs of our table and wondered how much weight they could carry before they snapped. Around midnight, I heard laughing out in the hall, bright and easy, and envied strangers. In the morning, she came back like a storm that ran out of rain. She had an apology shaped like a plan. "We need rules," she said. "No using the other's work. No sharing sensitive info. I'll make it up to you on Harper Street. I'll call that guy you hate at Marston and get him to listen. He owes me." "You'll what?" I asked. "I'll help you," she said, "like I always do." "Even your help feels like control," I said. "Stop trading favors with my life." Day by day, our house turned into a co-working space with a Cold War. We made coffee in silence like co-founders after lawsuits. She took calls on the balcony with a blanket over her shoulders and laughed in a way that made my jaw ache. I worked on Harper Street and pretended my test number hadn't made it to someone else's screen. I told my boss I'd handled the presentation solo. He nodded like a man keeping a promise to himself. The third escalation was not about work. It was about us. It happened on a Thursday when I stopped at the grocery store for lemons and walked past the place where the store tapes up community flyers. There was a lecture announcement from an arts nonprofit with a tiny photo grid of last month's panel. In it, Julia was on stage with a guy in a gray suit whose face I had seen once in the reflection of a hotel bar mirror. The caption called it "A Conversation on Authenticity." The quote under it read, "Too many stories are held back by timid partners." I had to read it twice before I felt the words land. It was her voice under someone else's photo. It was my word in print. I took a picture with my phone and stood in the cereal aisle with my heart slamming like a dropped book. "I showed her that night. You said that," I said, pointing. "It's taken out of context," she said. "What's the context where I'm not the joke?" I asked. She didn't have an answer. She went to the bedroom, closed the door, and shut off the light. If this were a movie, this is where a friend shows up with whiskey and advice. I didn't call anyone. Men like me carry our pain like a quiet bag. We hope no one asks what's inside. But my sister called me Sunday morning, the kind of call that is really a rope thrown over water. "You sound like a winter," she said after I told her everything without telling her anything. "I'm fine," I said. "You're not," she said. "She's setting you on fire and calling it a candle." "What do I do?" "You stop being the stage," she said. "You stop making space for the joke." "What does that look like?" I asked. "It looks like you standing up when the waiter asks if everything is okay and saying no." The fourth escalation was the presentation, not hers, mine. Harper Street called all firms to give final pitches. It was a Tuesday in a room with bad carpet and a window that made the skyline look like a painting you weren't sure was straight. We went third. I wore a suit that felt like it belonged to a version of me I wanted to meet. I talked about daylight like it was medicine. I talked about how retail fronts need to breathe. I talked about the way a narrow courtyard can become a pocket park and how people without yards still need somewhere to set their coffee in the sun. I did not talk about numbers. I didn't have to. They had my number. When we were done, the developer thanked us and gave me a look that said we were close. Then he glanced at his phone and asked one more question. How will you manage change orders differently after what happened on Johnson? He said. Johnson was an old job that had gone sideways 3 firms ago. The story of that job lived on now like a cautionary tale. I had not mentioned Johnson. It wasn't in our materials. The only person I had talked to about Johnson last week, out loud, had been Julia when she'd asked why my back tensed when a client said the word Swift. I opened my mouth and closed it. We'll own our mistakes, I said. We'll put red lines in public, not in emails. After, I sat in my car and watched steam from my breath fog the windshield and thought about the kind of life where the person you love makes you weaker. I thought about the night at dinner when she taught a table to laugh at me. I thought about how my hands had been fists under white linen. I thought about the waiter and my lie. Then I drove home. She was there, on the couch, with a glass of red that left a ring on the coaster I bought with her face on it as a joke. One Christmas when we still joked. "How did it go?" she asked, bright. "I don't know," I said. She patted the cushion. "Come here," she said. "We can fix this. We always do." I sat across from her, not beside her, and put another stack of paper on the table. This was not a timeline. It was a letter I had written in plain words. It said, "I am not your punchline." It said, "You used my work." It said, "You told a room I was timid." It said, "You traded my trust for applause." It said, "I love you and I am drowning." She read the first lines and rolled her eyes because she thought we were in a loop that always ended in bed. Then she got to the middle and her face changed. "Don't say divorce," she said. "I didn't," I said. "I said stop." "Stop what?" she asked. "Stop using me as content," I said. "Stop taking my words and turning them into slides. Stop putting your career in rooms that make me small." "You want me to lose the account?" she said, and her voice went hard. "You want me to be less?" "I want you to be kind," I said. She looked at me like I'd asked her to carry a car. "I can't be everything," she said. "I didn't ask for everything," I said. "I asked for respect." "You want me quiet," she said. "You want me plain." "I want you honest," I said. "I want us honest." "Then here's honest," she said, sitting forward, the wine catching light. "Those people, my people, don't want quiet men. They want a story where the woman took a man who would still be living with no curtains and made him something. They want me brave. They want me bold. If I have to make a joke to be seen, I'll make it. If I have to borrow your words, I'll borrow them, because I am tired of being small in rooms where men are born tall." I thought about the boys in suits at dinner with their pretty watches and unblinking compliments. I thought about being born tall and the lie of it. I thought about my sister's voice on Sunday telling me to stand. "Then we're not a we," I said. She blinked. "Don't be stupid." "I'm not being stupid," I said. "I'm being precise." She stood up, turned, walked to the window, and looked at a city that had never cared for either of us beyond what we could give it. "You'll regret this," she said. "Maybe," I said, "but I won't be small." The last escalation wasn't loud. We met a mediator because Chicago is full of people who will sell you a soft ending. We divided a life into boxes with labels. She kept the couch and the coffee table and the balcony chairs where she taught clients to see themselves as movies. I kept the bed and the kitchen knives and the lamp I had sanded down and refinished the winter. We were too broke for a new one. We sold the rest and split the account like a bill you don't want to pay but have to. I found a small place east of Logan Square with a view of a parking lot that looked like a lake when it rained. I bought curtains. I hung them myself and smiled at the dumb feeling it gave me. I put my projects on my walls with my name under them, even though nobody ever came over to see. Harper Street called a month later. We didn't get it. We were second. The developer called me anyway, which they don't do, and said he liked how I talked about daylight. "You were the only one who spoke like a person who lives in what he draws," he said. "We'll find something for you." Julia's campaign launched without me. I didn't watch the video when it hit. Friends texted links and I said, "Good for her," and most days I meant it. A trade site quoted a line in bold, "Too many stories are held back by timid partners." It didn't make me shake anymore. It made me sad for her and a little for me, the way you feel sad when you see a picture of someone you used to love wearing your jacket on a new street. 2 months after I moved, I got a DM from a junior at a tiny agency who had been at that dinner the night everything snapped. He wrote, "Hey, I'm sorry, you seemed kind. I laughed because everyone did." I sat with that longer than I expected. I wrote back, "Be better than that table." He sent back a thumbs up and a heart, the clumsy language of strangers, and it was enough. It took time to stop rehearsing the fight, to stop imagining the perfect line, the perfect proof, the perfect exit. It took time to stop checking her Instagram for sweets and smiles. It took time to stop smelling the citrus that wasn't a fruit. It took time to forgive myself for lying to a waiter. It took time to recognize that men like me can cry and still drive a project to stamp. One Saturday near the tail edge of winter, I went to a talk at the architecture center by a woman who builds tiny houses for people who got pushed out of places. She spoke like a person who knows that walls matter more to people who haven't had any. After, I asked a question about budget phasing and we ended up in the lobby with coffee and paper cups. Her name was Carla. She wore boots, you can walk in. She asked about daylight like it was music. When I said I cooked a lot now just for the smell of onions and butter, she smiled and said, "That's home." I didn't give her my story, I gave her my name. A year after the dinner, I walked past the River North restaurant and saw a different couple at the front table, a woman telling a room who her man was. I didn't go in. I went home and made soup and opened a window to let the cold air braid with the steam. My apartment felt like the right size. The curtains glowed without showing everything. I took a photo just to keep the light. I didn't post it. I printed it and put it on the fridge with a magnet we bought in a place we won't go again. When the waiter asks me now, "Everything okay?" I say yes when it is and no when it isn't. I say it so ordinary it feels like a miracle. That's the funny thing about small truths, said out loud, they sound like bells. Do you speak up at the table when someone you love turns you into a joke? If your partner used your work to win their battles, would you call it support or theft? If you want more true and fair stories like this, stick around. I've got more.